Today on Rappler, the government orders aviation officials to clear the Davao airport and resume flights after a plane overshot the runway. A university in Davao calls for the boycott of Cebu Pacific. And Taiwanese investigators identified the gun used in the shooting of a Taiwanese fisherman. Hello, I'm Ayi Makaraig, sitting in for Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. Transportation Secretary June Abaya orders the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines to clear the Davao Airport runway to allow the resumption of flights at one of the country's busiest airports. On Sunday, a Cebu Pacific plane carrying 165 passengers from Manila crash-landed and overshot the runway during a heavy downpour. No one was hurt in the incident. CAAP Deputy Director General Captain John Andrews says the deadline for the removal of the plane is 7 a.m. Tuesday. Cebu Pacific, flag carrier Philippine Airlines, and its unit PAL Express are rerouting their Davao flights to General Santos at least 2 hours away. The Transportation Department says affected passengers are entitled to reimbursement for canceled flights under the Air Passenger Bill of Rights. In a rare move by a school against an airline company, the Ateneo de Davao University says it is boycotting Cebu Pacific because of the, quote, insensitivity and ineptness of its personnel. In a strongly worded letter Monday, ADU President Father Joel Tabora notes the actions of airline personnel after Flight 5J971 overshot the Davao Airport runway. Tabora says passengers had to endure 27 minutes in a smoked cabin before airline personnel allowed them to leave the plane by coming down emergency slides. Tabora adds, I am incensed not because there was a mechanical failure, but because of Cebu Pacific's manifest human failure. We will generally recommend a boycott of Cebu Pacific. You do not deserve customers. Cebu Pacific tells Rappler it is validating Tabora's claims and will give more information once available. Responding to questions on the length of time it took Cebu Pacific crew to evacuate its passengers, aviation expert Benjamin Solis says it is part of standard operating procedure to immediately evacuate passengers in an emergency. It allegedly took Cebu Pacific personnel 30 minutes to let its passengers disembark after the plane overshot the Davao Airport runway. Solis adds, fire trucks should have reached the Davao Airport under 2.5 minutes based on international aviation standards. The Cebu Pacific aircraft was flown by Captain Antonio Roel Oropesa, who has 1,600 flight hours, and First Officer Edwin Perello, who has 700 flight hours. Our social media post of the day comes from Twitter user Jason Cruz. Reacting to a call to boycott Cebu Pacific, he says, I think it's reasonable. Flyers have been exchanging safety for seemingly cheaper flights for too long. Interior Secretary Mar Rojas says authorities focus on gathering evidence from the 2 surrender condominium unit in Global City, Taguig, where a deadly blast occurred on May 31st. Investigation is centered on the blast site, Unit 501B. Investigators are also looking to interview the unit's occupant, Angelito San Juan, who is now in intensive care at St. Luke's Medical Center. 3 were killed in the incident: Marlon Castillo Bandiola, Jeffrey Cunanan Umali, and Salimar Natividad. The cause of the explosion is still unknown. Rojas says 3 teams of bomb-sniffing dogs initially found no residue of bombs or explosive devices in the area. Philippine stocks plummet as the strong explosion spooks investors sitting on top of gains from the market's previous highs. The Philippine Stock Exchange Index nosedives by 3.68% to 6,763.38. Taiwan investigators on Saturday identified the gun used in the fatal shooting of a Taiwanese fisherman by Philippine Coast Guard on May 9. Citing unnamed sources, Taiwan Central News Agency reports the investigators say 2 guns were used to shoot at the fishing boat, including an M14 rifle suspected of firing the fatal shot. The report also says a shooter was identified and confessed to opening fire. A report from Taiwan's Apple Daily says 8 Filipino Coast Guard members admitted to opening fire but said they shot at the sky or into the sea, not the fishing boat. No one admitted to using the M14 rifle. The Philippines insists the Taiwanese fishing boat intruded into its waters, forcing the Coast Guard to open fire. But Taiwan rejects this, saying the fishing boat was within its exclusive economic zone. The National Bureau of Investigation has yet to release its findings. Philippine Justice Secretary Leila de Lima says the NBI is rushing the probe to, quote, douse further speculation on the matter. De Lima adds, if the NBI finds any administrative or criminal liability, I would not want to preempt them. They will make appropriate recommendations, but until then, it's premature. Education Secretary Brother Armin Luistro leads the start of classes in public schools nationwide Monday. He joins us today. Good evening, Secretary Luistro.
Hi, good evening, Rappler listeners.
Yes, thanks for joining us. Brother Armin, this is the first day of the opening of classes. What's your assessment? Have we addressed the usual problems that we have when classes open? We have over 20 million students going back to school today.
In 46,000 schools, well, my quick response to that is, I think if I compare it with how we did last year and maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we definitely were able to address many of those shortages. And I was looking over some of the reports, even on major television networks. And I think at the very least, they're finding it very difficult to look for places to focus on showing some of those major problems. So at least from our perspective on how we were prepared compared to last year or 2 or 3 years ago, I think our teachers and our principals did so much better with the help of our parents and the community who helped us during the Brigada Escuela.
Okay. You've said before that you've addressed shortages in textbooks and seats, but the backlog in classrooms, teacher items, and water and sanitation facilities will be addressed before the end of the year. Can you tell us about these efforts?
Yes. We have enough in our budget, and we continue to replenish textbooks and armchairs as they are reported to us. So if there are any such reports on students or classes that still have not received their allocation for textbooks, replacements of armchairs, the only thing they need to do is to report that to us. As with respect to the other 3 shortages, teachers, we have hired this month 61,500. If you add the teachers that continue to be funded by the local school board, as well as the nationally funded volunteer kinder teachers, we have enough teachers. In fact, our national ratio teachers to students is, I think, 1:37, or maybe even down to 1:35. And then the other 2, classrooms and toilets, in our budget, and as we speak, many of those are being constructed. That's all ongoing construction. 90,000 toilets and maybe another 34,000 classrooms. By December, our target is that maybe 70-80% of those should already be actually finished and turned over for use by our students. So we're, I think, doing pretty good, more than at any other time in the lifetime of the department.
Okay, right. Speaking of the department, your primary program is the K-12 program. This is the second year we're implementing this. Do you think we've addressed the birthing pains experienced last year? Like, teachers used to complain about delays in the modules and materials. Are we better off now?
Well, at the very least, the delays last year when we did the grade 1 and grade 7, we will be able to distribute the new modules for our learners much earlier than last year. So there's an improvement there. That is obviously our major reform, and I think I'll have to explain that we need to understand that we actually need to do actual content for 12, and this year we have added 7 other mother tongue languages.
How equipped do you think the teachers are now? Like, do you think the training was enough?
Obviously not. A 5-day training is merely an orientation into the new curriculum. The divisions are supposed to monitor and have a feedback mechanism on actually both the content as well as the contextualization of the modules in the respective regions and divisions. A total overhaul of the curriculum will only happen over time. And I'm a realist on this. We will do what we can. Obviously, we have a lot of improvement that we can do on a year-to-year basis.
Lastly, we'd like to ask you about the opening of classes in the Pablo hit areas, the typhoon hit areas in Davao Oriental, Compostela Valley. What are classes like there? We've been receiving reports that classes are done under the trees or even in tents. Like, what have you heard from those areas?
No, not really under the trees. As early as January this year, typhoon hit during the Christmas break. We've installed at least 200 temporary shelters. We call them tent classrooms. And other NGOs have also supplied us with extra tent classrooms. We know that we could not rebuild the classrooms as fast as in the other typhoon hit areas, precisely because the key cities that have and municipalities that have been hit by Pablo are those that are in the vulnerable areas that could continue to experience the same intensity of wind and rainfall.
Okay.
So the instruction to us of the President and NDRRMC is to make sure that if we rebuild, this will be in areas that have already complied with the environmental safety standards.
Right.
So we're going slow on those, but what we have done is repaired those that where we could actually put roofs over. So these are temporary repairs, most of them done by DPWH. And in those areas where we don't have the assurance of the safety standards for the next typhoon, we have just put in the tent.
That was Education Secretary Armin Luistro. Students all over the country troop back to school. Education Secretary Armin Luistro opens the start of class in the former leper colony of Culion, Palawan. Zach Yuson files this video blog.
It's June 3, the first day of classes here at Lumber Camp Elementary School, Barangay de Carabao, Culion, Palawan. Earlier, Brother Armin Luistro, the Secretary of Education, officially opened the start of class, and he also received a donation of school tables and chairs from former alumni of La Salle Lipa, and a Japanese donor.
Yung ating pong mga gagawing innovation sa kagawaran, palagay ko po, kailangan mag-umpisa sa Palawan. Pwede po bang turuan nyo kami? What are the innovations in educational solutions that we can think of, pilot test in Palawan, and share?
We're here to see how education is brought to the farthest reaches of the Philippines, especially in Culion, Palawan, which was once a leper colony and was off limits to the ordinary Filipino. Today, of course, it's very open to tourists, and even then, despite all the influx of tourists, there's still problems with regards to bringing quality education to the remotest areas.
53 fellows of Teach for the Philippines begin the challenge of teaching in public schools for 2 years. Teach for the Philippines, a branch of the Teach for All movement, is a non-government organization which recruits and trains talented college graduates to teach in public schools. The first batch of TFP fellows, composed of fresh graduates, young professionals, and returning Filipino Americans, graduated from the program's Summer Institute Saturday night at the Ateneo de Manila University. One of the fellows, Kilo Enares Chuidan, says he is excited for his first class.
I guess it was really just amazing, the idea of just working for a startup and for something I firmly believe in, which is education.
Education Undersecretary Rizalino Rivera says there's a lot of work to be done for the education system, but he remains positive.
The challenges are great, but if we don't take the chance, if we don't take the risk, if we don't do something about it, then we all better migrate to other countries because we've given up.
For their 2-year teaching assignments, the fellows are spread across 10 different public schools around Quezon City. Turkey's government faces pressure to end the violence after angry demonstrators clash for a third night with police in a nationwide wave of protests. What began as local outcry over plans to redevelop a park in Taksim Square snowballs into a protest against Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Violence broke out Friday, spilling into Saturday. Interior Minister Muammer Gular says more than 1,700 people were arrested nationwide. He says 58 civilians and 115 security officers are also injured. On Saturday, Erdogan says his government will continue with the park redevelopment. He also admits some mistakes in the police response and called off the police from Taksim after an outcry. Many demonstrators say the protest is about freedom of speech and the government's dictatorial tendencies. Erdogan's populist government is accused of trying to make the predominantly Muslim but staunchly secular country more conservative. Let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 4, a top general of China's People's Liberation Army says Chinese warships will continue to patrol waters where Beijing has territorial claims despite rows with neighboring countries over the South China Sea and islands controlled by Japan. Responding to a question at a security conference in Singapore, China's Lieutenant General says Beijing's sovereignty over the areas could not be disputed. He adds the Chinese warships and the patrolling activities are totally legitimate and uncontroversial. China is locked in a territorial dispute with Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam in the South China Sea. At number 5, the United States and China agreed to hold high-level talks in July on rules of behavior for cybersecurity and commercial espionage. The move addresses what the U.S. alleges as computer break-ins and theft of corporate and government secrets on a daily basis. But Beijing insists it is a victim of cyber attacks, not the perpetrator. It cites the U.S. and Israel's cyber attacks on Iran's nuclear program as evidence against Washington. But the Pentagon claims it has evidence of a unit of the People's Liberation Army as the group behind the sophisticated attacks. At number 7, international aid groups appeal to Syrian rebels and government forces to allow civilians trapped in the city of Qusayr to be evacuated as rebel forces brace for a fresh attack by the army and its Hezbollah allies. The fighting began 2 weeks ago with the regime's attempt to gain control of the strategic city bordering Lebanon. The powerful Lebanese Shiite group, a staunch ally of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, sent thousands of fighters to help put down the uprising. Activists in Syria say escape routes for civilians have become unsafe, with evacuees being attacked by Syrian forces. At number 9, in a tell-all TV interview Sunday, international Filipino singer Charis Pempenco responds to rumors about her sexuality and admits she's a lesbian. Speaking to TV host Boy Abunda, the young singer says she feels light and free now that she has come out. Charis apologizes to fans whom she may have disappointed. The singer first caught international attention in 2007 after talk show host Ellen DeGeneres discovered her YouTube videos and invited her to perform. And at number 10, movie star Michael Douglas reveals his throat cancer, long assumed to be related to his smoking and drinking habits, was caused by oral sex. In an interview with The Guardian, the actor says his cancer is caused by the sexually transmitted human papilloma virus. The 68-year-old Douglas was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in August 2010. He is now more than 2 years clear of cancer after going through an intensive 8-week course of chemotherapy and radiation. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel and your vote comes down to the Mood Navigator in the middle of the front page, which crowdsources the mood of the day. It also gives you the top 10 stories that got the most clicks. Let's check today's Mood Navigator. Clearly, the story with the most clicks is the big entertainment story over the weekend, Charis, Opo, Tomboy po ako. It has 29% of readers feeling inspired, 26% annoyed. Another story that got people feeling inspired on poor people's poor judgment, a thought leader's piece by Nicole Corato on Senator-elect Nancy Binay, has 53% of readers feeling inspired, 16% amused. But we see 2 stories with a grayish-blue color for sad. These are both related to the Serendria blast last Friday. Salimar comes home, 98% sad, and the story on the people and faces behind the tragedy, shattered dreams for Serendria victim, 89% sad. All contributing to the mood of the day. Today, most people are sad. That's Rappler's Newscast for today, Monday, June 3, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Ayi Makaraig, and as we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today. We leave you with experts of a video by Patricia Evangelista on the widow left behind by Serendria blast victim, Salimar Natividad.
Meron ng identities, wala lang sa akin, nasa sa NCRPO pa at they will be informing the next of kin muna, no, bago i-release. At sana
pangalan niya si Salimar Natividad, palayaw niya mag 14 years na kami magkasama. Ito, may 2 kaming anak. Okay naman yung pamilya namin, saya. Umuwi siya, lingguan, araw ng day off. Sipag naman siya magtrabaho. Sa may dumating na lang dito ako matok, yun nga. Huwag daw ako mabibigla. Akala ko naman aksidente lang. Yung pala, wala na pala.
Tsaka po si Papa, maalalahanin po. Lagi po akong pinagbabawalan yun. Sabi nga niya po sa akin, bawal nga daw ako magpaligaw eh.
Sabi ng pangaray ko, hindi daw niya matanggap. Kasi ka-text lang niya ng gabing yun eh. Kamusta na? Lagi na mo gano'n, kamusta na? Bahay na ba kayo? Ano ulam niyo? Mga ganyan. 6, 7. Hindi ko na ano mangyari. 8 na pala, nawala na siya. Kasi dito pa lang, pagkatapos siya sa akin sabihin, umiiyak na ako eh. Tapos lalo na din, biyak ako lalo. Lalong nakita ko. Yung itsura niya, sa side ng niya, face. May damage. Hindi ko matanggap, syempre, bigla.
tumatakbo po yung kanilang sasakyan. Talagang malas. I mean, hindi ko alam kung anong tamang salita, pero talaga namang tumatakbo ang kanilang sasakyan. Nang nangyari yung pagsabog, tinamaan yung sasakyan nila ng slab ng semento at yung sasakyan nila nag-slam.
Baka po tumigil muna ako sa bagal kasi wala po kasi suporta kay mama eh.
Tuwa siya nabuntis ako. Niya malapit na yan.
Nahihirapan po siya kasi ngayon po buntis siya. Wala pong magsusuporta.